Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Topline. We're here, episode 82. It's me, Sam Jacobs, Asad Zaman, CEO of Sales Talent Agency, AJ Bruno, CEO of QuotaPath. And we're joined by friend of the pod and world-renowned CEO David Obrand, who's the CEO of Salesloft. David, welcome back to Topline. We're excited to have you back.
Thanks, Sam. I'm excited to be here with all you guys.
Well, it's an exciting time all around. Here we are at the end of October. And how's everybody doing? AJ, how are you?
Oh, is this the wellness check part of the episode, guys?
This is
good.
The awkward transition into the document.
We have to start with AJ because AJ's been traveling 10 out of 12 weeks. So
Yeah.
how are you?
Welcome to Topline, the podcast for the best founders, operators, and investors in B2B tech. Every week, AJ Bruno, Asad Zaman, and me, Sam Jacobs, will break down what's important for you to know to be the most well-informed professionals in the market.
CEOs and founders, this is your chance to connect and grow in an exclusive CEO and founders only environment. Pavilion's CEO Summit 2025 is happening January 22nd and 23rd in New Orleans. Forget theory. Our action-packed workshops deliver tangible takeaways to drive your strategies forward. Plus, with Pavilion's connections-first approach, you'll build lasting relationships rooted in collaboration, growth, and support. Reserve your spot now at joinpavilion.com/CEO Summit and join 150 plus high growth CEOs for 2 days of insights and meaningful connections.
Well, look, we just found out. So I'm doing really well. I am getting all the things prepped for the end of the week because the girls, myself, my wife, and my in-laws are all taking a trip to Hawaii. So we're headed out there for a little bit, and I have started to dive into the wonderful world of customer success over the last month. So I handed off marketing. I am no longer the CMO of QuotaPath. Handed it off, and I am all customers all day long. And let me tell you, I've got some learnings, which hopefully we'll get to at some point. But it's been good. I'm doing well, Sam. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm in Deer Valley in Utah, here at the Great Hill Partners Growth Summit, and it's a fun event.
No snow there yet, right?
It is snowing. It's snowing as we speak. It's gorgeous outside. And yesterday we went for a great hike, and the food's really good. So that's what I have to say about that. And I'm getting ready for my own move. 12 days now. Actually, 11 days. Maybe 12.
Barcelona. David, Sam is moving to Barcelona.
What?
Yeah.
That's generally the reaction he gets.
We maybe should have hit on out of the gate. Why are you moving to Barcelona?
I'm moving to Barcelona because I fell in love with a woman that lives in Barcelona, and she would like me to live in Barcelona, and I would like to live in Barcelona with her. And before I professed my love for her, she had just decided to start an office for her software startup and recruit a bunch of people to move to Barcelona. So she said, if you'd called me a couple months earlier, I would have moved to New York. But as it is, I've just told 7 people that they need to move to Barcelona. So you have to move to Barcelona. So I am moving to Barcelona a week from Saturday.
Wow.
This is Sam's way of announcing he's the chapter head of Barcelona.
We have a chapter, Zach Groper. I would never take that title from Zach, but the fun thing is that both Zach and I are from the DC area, so we're both big Washington Commanders fans. So anyway.
Man, we could spend the whole hour talking about the last 3 seconds of it. Wow.
It was amazing, wasn't it?
Oh.
Makes you believe in God.
You're a Bears fan, yeah.
Exactly. And Asad, well, how about you? How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I feel healthy. I'm sleeping well. I'm eating well. I'm wearing this new wearable that sends vibrations that tells my brain I'm meditating, but I don't have to meditate. So I feel very zen, which is great.
Well, wonderful. Well, why don't we, Asad, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, David, the last conversation was fascinating. One of my favorites that we've had. And so it's great to have you back. Maybe the place to start is it's only been a few months, but a lot has happened in the world around those few months. Everything from AI to the economy. And so maybe the jumping off point is that between then and now, what have you changed your mind about when it comes to strategy and direction that Salesloft is going down? Has anything changed, or is it the same plan as before?
I'm glad you started with an easy one.
Always.
I mean, okay. I guess we'll just jump right in. I thought we'd be talking about Maui.
Some diving.
Barcelona.
Maybe face-to-face. So let's talk about the last few months. So we embarked this year, just given the uncertainty in the market, the broader economy, we were very grounded this year on ensuring that we would exit the year being profitable on a fully levered basis. That was very important to us. We do believe that there's going to be a lot of consolidation in the space. We do believe that, knock on wood, depending on what happens next week in the election, that we do believe we're going to go into 2025 with some stability in the global economy, the U.S. economy. And as a result of that, we want to maximize our optionality, both on the consolidation side, if that were to happen. But also we want to make sure that our growth next year is not done in a way that brings risk to the business, depending on what happens in the broader macro environments. And so, we have been steadfast in that. I think where maybe we have changed a little bit is we have seen some tailwinds in the last 4 months that have validated for us to start to lean more heavily into growth of the business. So we've actually increased fairly significantly our allocation of capital towards growth, particularly in the enterprise and the strat side of our business in the last 4 months. AI has always been a constant for us. And so I don't think anything has changed there. But I think the biggest thing is leaning a little bit more heavily into enterprise growth of the business and ensuring that we can do that without creating risk in our ability to hit profitability.
And David, when you say we've made significant investments towards this, what signals do you look for that give you the confidence to make significant investments into growth?
Yeah, so it's a couple of things. One of which is, I think, and we've seen this broadly in the industry, I don't think many companies are buying features and functions right now, in their software spend. What we are hearing consistently from large enterprise customers is we need to transform how we go to market. That's the number one requirement we are hearing from our prospects and our customers. And so we looked for a couple of things. We wanted to see a concentration in messaging from our prospects in terms of what they're looking for, making sure we could correlate that with our offering. Then we looked at and said, okay, the customers that we have brought in sort of under the tent of Salesloft in the last year, have we been able to successfully deliver on those expectations? Then we looked out and said, okay, within our pipeline, how many lookalikes do we have? And do we think we can actually get to them this year? Do we think that, we can transition them from prospects to successful customers in the appropriate amount of time? And as we looked at that, we felt like that pipeline was accelerating at a pace that exceeded pipeline for other parts of the business. We do feel a very high correlation in terms of what we build and how it addresses those needs. But, look, I think you had Mark Nemec on, our CRO, a couple of months ago. He's phenomenal as a leader. And, both him and Sam Loveland, our chief customer officer, have really come together in a really meaningful way, along with our product and engineering leads, to ensure that we have a really good flywheel for how we assess these prospects coming in, making sure we scope them the right way with post-sales in the pre-sales effort there. So we have no sort of janky handoff. And then we just sort of micromanage the deliverables on it. But, we were talking, Sam and I were talking before you guys jumped on, one of the benefits of moving to the enterprise, while it's a little lumpier just given the size of the deals, and there are a lot fewer of them than in the commercial, but as long as you feel like you have a really strong value proposition, in many ways, it's far more predictable over the course of the year than, what you see in the commercial side of the business. So for us, that's been our big area of focus. We measure weekly, monthly, quarterly across a myriad KPIs just to make sure we're making the right progress. They are very expensive. So your customer acquisition costs are high, your cycle time is long. So you don't want to do it just on gut alone. But I think as you're able to, one of the things I've always found, Asad, is like, if you get one great enterprise customer and you make them successful, you can go get 3 more. If you get 3, you can get 10 more. You get 10, now you're in a really interesting scale opportunity. And so, we've been pretty methodical about that. 2 years ago, we had, 56, 57% of this business was in what we would have called commercial. And now, over 58% is in the enterprise for us. So,
that was something, Mark, that you mentioned. Mark was on our sister pod with Kyle Norton and talked a lot about enterprise grade and the rigor bringing to it. Actually went through, it's a great episode for those that haven't caught it yet. Went through a lot of the things, David, that you're talking about and how to actually operationalize it with the team. Yeah. The resource allocation is interesting. And first off, I think that's refreshing to hear. I think there's a lot of skepticism still from guests that we have on, or from what we're hearing in the market, specifically at the enterprise, of what are the sales cycles look like. And so I was curious as you think about resourcing heavily, that can mean a lot of different things, headcount and time investment. It sounds like there's a time investment. But for Salesloft right now, what when you say resourcing and you talk at the board level, or the trade-offs that you're making, what are you really referring to?
Okay. I love this podcast, by the way.
That's nice.
We're just going to flip that. That's the ad from now on.
As my French partner would say, that's nice.
Okay, so here's the thing. I believe that there is a truism, and look, all of us are sellers, but we're also buyers in our businesses. Mm-hmm. So we all get it, right? I think buyers buy for 3 primary reasons, and this gets to the resource allocation. Nobody, especially in this market, is buying something big in the enterprise because they're bored and they just thought, I'll go shopping for some software. That's not the case. People are buying because they have a problem and it's crushing them. And so they want to solve the problem with speed. They want to be done with it so they can get back to work. So I think velocity or speed of acquisition is a big one out there. But you got to sort of counterbalance that with, if I make a big purchase decision on behalf of my business and it goes sideways, I'm in like deep trouble. As my grandfather would say, deep bandini. So you've got to mitigate risk at the same time as you want to move really fast, which is like a huge problem. The third piece of this is you do not want to have to revisit this thing in 18 months. So whatever you buy, you better be sure it is going to innovate at a pace that exceeds your own company's innovation, but in the same direction. So if that's the case, how do you deal with that as a seller? Well, the way you deal with that is you've got to figure out on-ramps and off-ramps for both you and the prospect early in the process, because you do not want to waste a bunch of time and a bunch of resources and then find out that, one of you is leaving the other at the altar. So the way that we do that is we really put ourselves sort of in the shoes of the prospect: speed, risk, and long-term success. So how do you do that? The first thing you have to do is we love to employ the student-teacher model, which is we need to teach you something, you need to teach us something. It completely changes the buyer-seller dynamics. Like the social contract just becomes really different. I don't know why I'm looking at you, AJ, but you asked a question. So like if you teach me something and then I teach you something, our dynamics just become very different than me trying to sell you something, right? Yeah. And so look, I need to know everything about your business. I need to know why we're talking, what's broken, how are you doing things the way you are doing, what are you trying to accomplish, why are things the way they are with you? I need you to just teach me all of that. I need to teach you all of the stuff that we do that I can't change. I'm in the cloud, I'm not on premise, I cannot change that. But there are certain truisms about my business that if they don't work for you, I can't change them, and so we should part ways. Once we get through that, what we then do is we focus all around time to trust. And I think any business going in the enterprise has to do this. So how do you deal with time to trust? Well, you figure out what the business is doing today, and then absent any constraints, how do you commingle in-house best practices within the prospect and your industry best practices, because you've done this thousands of times, and come up with for lack of a better, sort of term, a 2B vision of what the prospect actually wants to accomplish. As soon as they have that, you actually have to show them that in production. Just a small swath of it, a slice of it, because you have to give them something tangible that they can see and touch. And you have to correlate this unconstrained vision to something that they can actually get their arms around, show to their colleagues. If you do that, a lot of things happen. First of all, velocity definitely happens, both to get a deal done and get it implemented. We'll talk about why. Risk mitigation, you actually can feel it, see it, touch it, reference on it. That's huge. And then the other nice thing about that is that what we call sort of a phase 0 implementation or proof of concept is done in conjunction with our services people that are going to actually deliver the full scale implementation for you. So you get to not only develop a relationship with the people that are selling this to you, but you are also developing a relationship and trust with the people that are going to implement it for you. The nice thing about this is there's lots of on-ramps and off-ramps at any given point in that exchange for both the buyer and the seller to say, not right for me. And so if you have those checks and balances along the way, you don't worry about these big bloated sales cycles that don't result in a deal. But when you do get a deal done, that deal closes on a Friday. On Monday, you are already implementing. You have a deployment plan. Everyone's signed off. You have a little bit of a production environment with which to work from. And now everyone is just a little bit calmer in their focus. No one's worried so much about why is this going to go badly. They're all focused on how do we get a successful outcome as soon as possible. So we've got a value engineering team. We've got a sales engineering team. And then we bring in our CSM and our implementation team into that pre-sales environment. And we do that once we've been able to document their as-is environment. And then we share that with the team, with our internal team, as we bring them in for this broader 2B strategic conversation in phase 0. That's
David,
that works really well, for both parties. And I think it ensures that you get a much more consistent outcome.
I'm going to take something that you said the last time we had you on, which was the winner of the market will win the enterprise. It was something to that effect.
Mm-hmm. Or the winner of the enterprise will win the market, probably.
Win the market.
It is, yeah.
The winner of the enterprise will win the market.
Yeah.
And what you're saying here, you said earlier, like getting 1, 3 lookalikes, then 10 customers. The time investment that it takes for what you just described is enormous. And I think that's really interesting because you have, as a CEO or executive team, you are the ones, these aren't just sales-led sales. These are like executive-led sales. These are CEO-led sales. You're involved in a lot of these sales cycles, I guarantee it.
Yeah.
And so the time investment to do that and take that chance and the risk is, I think, where a lot of companies are getting tripped up because it's not been done before. You're basically having to create a new go-to-market, because it's go-to-market sales at the super enterprise is just not there yet. That playbook isn't there.
Yeah.
And we could talk to Asad, and Asad would say it's because RevOps is just a support function. We'll have that conversation, I'm sure, later. I think that what I hear when you say allocation and resource allocation is like, okay, now that makes sense, because that's a heavy investment. And to get sign off on that up front takes a lot of people writing checks to say like, yeah, David, you could go do this.
I think that's right. I think it's very important to think about that flywheel in conjunction with product and engineering as well. Because what you don't want to do is get into these situations where you get a monster opportunity. You get to the very end of that sales cycle and you realize the requirements are far afield of what your roadmap is. Because then you get a really tough dynamic, right? Which is, hey, we're bringing you this huge deal. If you don't want to take it, fine, don't take it. But then don't hold us accountable to hit the number. Then you create a weird division between product and engine go-to-market, which you do not want. Those two need to be very tight. And so when I talked about the on-ramps and the off-ramps and teaching and learning, part of the teaching here is here's what we do and here's what we don't do. Now, all very large enterprise and strategic customers will have unique sets of requirements, but you want to be able to synthesize those requirements in a way to understand, if you build it, can you actually build it in a way that gives you broad repeatability across a larger enterprise set of customers. You don't want to build N of one functions because it slows down your long-term innovation. And so as you are going through and understanding how your prospect does what they do today and how they want to transform their go-to-market org to engage with their prospects and customers moving forward, that conversation has to be done through the lens of here's our roadmap. And let's talk about the outcomes you're trying to drive. Let's not talk about how we would design those. Let's just talk about the outcomes. We'll come back to you with different design concepts. But you're absolutely right, AJ. You've got to invest in this in a way that all of this work is something that will drive repeatability in the business, not a bunch of one-offs.
David, one of the things that we hear a lot of founders, especially founders that I think have found most of their success selling into the SMB, they'll say things of the sort that you shouldn't really worry about your competitors, play your own game, just run your own race, right? And I think that's a flawed way to think when you're making these big investments into the enterprise, right? Like you actually have to have a bit of a view of like, who am I competing? You talk about winning the market. You can't win the market without really knowing about your competitors. You can't go towards the enterprise without understanding what is our way to differentiate and win against these other options that they will be evaluating, because an enterprise company is not going to look at one vendor, right? So can you talk a little bit about how you view competition? How much do you look at them, understand them, think about them when you're thinking about strategy and capital allocation, and how much do you not worry about them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big differences between commercial and enterprise, and especially the high end of enterprise, when you land a very large logo, if you do it well, that logo will be with you 10, 15, 20 years. You know, I think back to some of the big logos that we sold very early at Salesforce.com back in 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8.
I appreciate that you added the .com just so that kind of like said how far back it was when we still had .com on our name.
Old school, man. I don't know what to tell you. Old school. As I was thinking through doing these deals on my BlackBerry at Salesforce.com.
Hip holstered BlackBerry.
Exactly. That little red dot light that made me crazy. But, you know, those deals done back then are some of Salesforce.com's largest customers still today, 20 years later. That's a very, very big difference from commercial.
Yeah. Commercial, you can lose your long-term hold on a customer is nowhere close to what it is on the enterprise. I think one of the mistakes our ecosystem made was that they looked at what Salesforce was experiencing in terms of high switching costs and long-term retention on some of their major accounts. And they thought that just holds true for all of SaaS. And it's just not true, right? Like small, medium-sized businesses churn all the time.
They do. A lot of them go out of business. They churn. Switching costs are lower because they're typically, less complex implementations and
acquired by a bigger company.
Not always, but sometimes. So look, I think competition matters. But here's the caveat to that. I don't think you should develop your strategy in a reactionary way based on your competition. I think you've got to figure out, where's the wedge in the market? Where's your superpower? Where do you think you can drive durable revenue and value? And then you figure out from there, what are the strings you can sort of tug on to expand your footprint, your share of wallet in those accounts. I think it is very dangerous in the enterprise to either be naive of your competitor, what your competitors are doing, or just too arrogant to care. I think you have to be mindful of it. But I don't think that is the route with which you then develop your strategy. I also think chasing competitors and frankly, chasing analysts around their market feedback, and using that exclusively to drive your roadmap is also very dangerous. One of the things we talked about this on the last time, you could build businesses with there's so many different sort of ethos or ideologies you can have. I always have gravitated towards customer-centric businesses. And the one thing I love about customer-centric businesses is there's so little bias that comes to you from feedback of customers that to me, that's a far better litmus test than anything else.
Have you noticed more to the point of this year and your comment at the beginning about consolidation, we talked the first time we chatted with you, David, we all concluded, we all left the conversation more bullish on Salesloft than, not that we were pessimistic beforehand, but it does feel like and it's reinforced in this conversation, that a differentiator possibly is your expertise on go-to-market focused on the enterprise. If you believe that whoever wins the enterprise will win the market, it really feels like your approach to winning the enterprise feels a little bit on the margin more sophisticated than the other conversations that we've had. Have you noticed a separation at that altitude between you and maybe some of the competitors or the other vendors in the space? Is that manifesting? Because last thing I'll say is, like, I'm at this conference right now, and I've been at a few different, private equity and VC conferences this year, and the sentiment isn't particularly positive. And we even had David Spitz on this pod a couple of weeks ago talking about declining GTM efficiency. So the market writ large, particularly for software, is mixed. I think I can't say that it's bullish. I think it's mixed. I think there's certain people that are doing well and certain people that aren't. But we always sense from talking to you that Salesloft is doing pretty well. I'm curious if you've noticed a little bit of a separation, within the customer segment that you're focused on.
Yeah, look, I think this is a fast-moving, innovative space, and we have good competitors for sure. I think the way that we approached architecting the platform certainly helped. We built a lot of what I would consider, not so sexy aspects of this platform early on. We built enterprise readiness. We built internationalization. We built localization. We built GDPR compliance. We built a bunch of stuff that is not shiny features, but ultimately gave us a huge advantage in going into these big transformational deals. I do think that the way we allocate capital towards customer success, towards services, towards the pre-sales resources that we use on these deals is somewhat different than the competition. And I think we show up differently as a result of that. We've had a very good year in the large enterprise. I attribute a lot of that to our product and eng team and to Mark and Sam and their leadership there. But
David,
this is a competitive space for sure.
Does that, when you make that decision to invest more than the average in places like professional services and these other areas, is the trade-off your margin profile in that instance? So you're saying our margins might look a little bit different in the short term, but we're trying to capture this market and this is the way to go after it. And then we can make adjustments over time. Once we've captured the enterprise, we can adjust the margin back to where we want it to be. Is that the core decision?
It's not the core decision. You look at how can you really reallocate capital from certain departments to other departments. So, you take down G&A a little bit to increase GTM. We allocated a considerable amount of capital, as we should have, and will continue to do so in R&D. But as we saw Rhythm come out and the market acceptance around that, now Command Center, which is sort of the bookend of Rhythm that comes out next month, we felt like we could take a little bit of capital from R&D and move it over. We also think about the durability of that revenue in enterprise. It is always multi-year, which is really nice. It typically graduates up. It typically ramps up over time. And then you do look at the margin. We're much more willing to think about margin trade-offs in big, durable enterprise transactions than we are in short-term commercial ones.
For sure.
100%.
Is this something that you're transparently talking to the organization as it evolves, or are you kind of processing these pieces, experimenting yourself, and then saying like, hey, like based on this is where we're headed?
No, we talk about it a lot. I was just thinking I was going to make an off the cuff comment.
You almost did it.
And it's all that's going to be out there.
I'll try a different route next time.
So no, we do talk about this a lot. We do all hands every month. We show the KPIs every month. But this was something that when we built Rhythm is built for the enterprise. It just is. And so we knew going in, to the R&D work last year that we were very focused on building something that drove consistency and repeatability in the enterprise. And not to pick on Asad, and Asad, I don't know what comment you made about RevOps, but it sounds like
he hates RevOps and thinks
I was like, listen,
totally
this is a
function.
He says it doesn't exist.
I thought this is what I said. You can agree or disagree. I said it's a force multiplier when done properly, but they don't deserve a seat at the table. And the table we're talking about is the executive table. And I come from the school of thought where you want to keep it as lean as possible. And there's a person they report into who's already sitting there, so they don't need to sit there. Not everybody gets a seat at the table was the point. And then obviously a lot of RevOps people felt very emotional about that.
I'm so glad David revisited this and picked up on it. Back to you.
Okay. So,
David, are you going to put your RevOps leader on your exec table?
I have. My leader has been a direct report of mine. Yeah.
Okay.
And so here's what I would tell you. This is, I think, a pretty cool nuance because I think how you're thinking about this and how I'm thinking about it, I think technology has changed this conversation the last 2 years. And here's what I would say. If you look at the average tenure of a CRO, it's under 2 years.
Yeah, 1.8.
Yeah, 1.8, 1.7. Yeah. When you think about a RevOps leader, it's longer than that. And, back in the BlackBerry and .com days that I'll never apparently get to live past. But, look, in those days, sales ops was very reactionary to the way the CRO stylistically wanted her or his organization to show up in market. It's a little bit different now today. I think when you have revenue orchestration platforms, you have the maturity of CRM systems, the machine that you build for your go-to-market team is something now that the CRO has to play within. They don't get to fully blow up the machine every time they're there because look, 1.8 years, you don't have enough time to blow up a machine.
That's really interesting.
You just don't. It's the whole combination of art and science. And look, I will say
think you're uniquely positioned to do this because you're a go-to-market expert, whereas like companies that are being run by more technical founders would have a much harder time doing this because you and them can be thought partners in designing this approach and the infrastructure and how we're going to do this. Whereas, let's say a developer who became a CEO with a RevOps person, do they have the ability to be the right thought partners for each other to do this? Do you think you're uniquely positioned?
I don't know if we're uniquely positioned. I think we're really well positioned for this. Here's what I would tell you. If you think about just the lift it takes to hire a CRO, determine what they want, build what they want, and then deploy it and see the results. I don't know how many quarters that is, but it's more than one. Feels like 3 to 4 to me. Now, it also depends on what the sales cycle of that business is. If I'm hiring a CRO that covers mid-market and enterprise and I have 2-quarter sales cycles, that means by the time the CRO gets what she or he wants in terms of system, people, processes, they're 5 quarters in there. They're already sort of behind.
Yeah.
They got a quarter or two to show. So I do not believe that AI is going to replace sellers. I do not believe that, AJ, as the CEO of QuotaPath, you're going to make a $500,000 platform decision simply by engaging with AI. It's just not going to happen. You want to talk to a human. I think AI makes humans better. But ultimately, the problem every CRO is trying to solve is I just got to hit my number with consistency, with repeatability. My contracts have to be durable. And as a CEO, if you think your CRO is going to change every 2 years, you're gonna sort of, I think, invest and lean in heavily on making sure you build a nimble go-to-market machine that can flex depending on what who that CRO is and the style they want. And so for that reason alone, and I also believe that RevOps spans all of go-to-market, the entire customer journey. And I want KPIs across all of that. And I frankly don't want any friction between what, one sales leader is telling me on the pre-sales and the other's telling me on the post-sales. I want one lens into that. So I actually do think, all joking aside, I think we are going to see not sales ops leaders, but true RevOps leaders will become peers and colleagues of CROs, not subordinates.
Yeah. I also love Asad's going to flip on this and be like, "Oh yeah, that sounds absolutely right." You know, David,
David's done a better job at convincing me than anybody else has. I would say
here's
that.
the
I didn't realize you were getting so picked on. I probably would have like moved a little to your corner if I realized that.
No, I like this.
Yeah.
You'll appreciate this, David. When we had you on after you left the second half of the episode, we were really impressed. And our audience, I've had lots of people come up to me and say like, "You're always really hard on guests, but David, you all were glowing afterwards. So you were doing something right." So Asad has flipped on RevOps. He's a firm believer today.
I'm gonna build a practice around placing RevOps leaders in these.
I agree with your point around the sellers are in AI, and I'm going to not make a $500,000 decision. However, if you reverse back 25 years ago, I don't think you could envision yourself even buying like a TV, let alone a car sight unseen, which is what happens today. So
Yes.
I do think given enough time, we're headed in that direction. We don't know what that looks like. It will evolve for sure.
Yes.
I don't know if a company is going to want to make that investment, right? Like one side is, will a customer do that? The other side is you're building a business, AJ, and you need to find the most predictable path to revenue and scaling your business. And so when you look at the job of a salesperson, you find that there's a lot of friction in sales. In the sales interaction between a seller and a buyer. And there's a lot of judgment and taste that goes into running a sales process really well. Those are things technology struggles with. And so you would be taking on the customer might not mind it, but you'd be taking on a lot of risk when it comes to company building if you were to make that your primary way to go to market. Now, there are some places where it works. I was having a dinner last week with a bunch of CROs, and you could tell that there was this split in the room. If you sold SMB, e-commerce, restaurants, etc., a lot of the CROs of sizable companies had replaced their BDR team with AI SDRs and had seen a lift in results over that. But they were selling to a particular type of customer at a particular size with customers that there's a lot of information available about them outside. When you spoke to the people that were more mid-market focused or enterprise focused, it was more assistance for research and administration, so powering the rep to be a little bit more productive than before, but not replacing the rep. So it does depend on what you're selling, but I find it very difficult to imagine that as a CEO, anyone would want to build an AI-based sales team and deploy capital.
I think in your point, and AJ's is spot on, and I should clarify my comment. There are especially consumer products out there that have a reputation that you can trust them. And I'll give you like some examples. So right now, everyone's telling me I should buy a sauna. You should buy a sauna for the house. You'll live forever. And like, all this stuff. Okay, fine. I am actually finding, and it's, I don't know, it's $2,000, $5,000, $6,000, whatever, depending on what you pick. That process I actually find I could largely do through an AI.
That's interesting.
I'm doing a ton of research. I think if I were to buy, a car, I probably don't need to talk to a salesperson. Maybe if I'm buying a very new concept car that I don't know about, but if I'm buying something like fine, I can deal with an AI. It's probably preferable in many ways. But I think if you're buying something that's highly consultative or something that has to be custom tailored to you or your business, or something that has to flex because your business is changing and you want to stay with this thing 5, 6, 7, 10 years, that's when I think it's really important to have a qualified professional involved in AI itself will not do the trick.
I think it's sort of what you just said, David, before, which is it's AI empowering and enhancing human productivity. And in that context of buying a sauna or a car, I almost think of the AI as the sales engineer. Can it do this? Can it do that? Does it have these capabilities where you understand that, like the job, I love what you said about speed to trust. The job of building the brand to enable trust happens outside the context of the AI. And then the AI is answering very specific questions. And I can see, like, for example, I could see a seller, a really good enterprise seller, that acknowledges that an AI sales engineer is joining the call with them just to make sure. And I could see that actually enhances trust between the buyer and the seller. If they say, I just want to make sure I don't speak out of turn. I want to make sure that we can deliver on these capabilities. So I'll ask the AI engineer, can it do this? Can it do that? Whereas that's very different from having the entire conversation being run by AI, which is sort of, I think, because I tend to agree with Asad fundamentally that there's also a brand component. It's interesting that, there's a lot of things that you can do that you don't want to do because it impacts the brand. And we were just talking in the Pavilion Topline Slack channel about how, Kyle Norton was telling me that there's a phrase for when you can sense that an AI wrote the email, and they call it bot breath. And you can sort of have a sense for whether, and I think like there's this distinction and delineation where, because I think what you said, Asad, is interesting that, people are reporting enhanced productivity through AI SDRs. My instinct is that that's not going to be very effective over the long term, but I could be wrong. But I definitely see AI. Go ahead.
You might be right, because one thing that I noticed about everybody that does have those benefits, two things. One is they have very large TAMs. So you might just be running through your TAM. So you're building pipeline, but are you just burning your TAM along the way, right? So that's one thing. I'm not sure, but that's a question I have in my mind. The other one is and a bunch of people were saying this, there's only like 4 or 5 people that can engineer what needs to be engineered for you to get those benefits. It's an engineering task more than it is a go-to-market task. Like, it seems heavy engineering with multiple LLMs included and just a lot of work that went into them being able to design that. So I think, there's just not a lot of people that can do it. And there's a competitive advantage early on when you figure something out before everybody else does. And so these ones have figured that advantage out. But it is not felt across the board, because our friend Tomas Tungus, he was doing this. He's done a survey where he asked a large number of CROs, what's your concern with AI purchases right now? A year ago, the number one concern was security. Right now, the number one concern is ROI. And so it's not equally being felt across the board.
I know that from my perspective, we were thinking about, do we want to present as the first thing that happens when you hit the Pavilion website? Do we want to present some kind of AI avatar that looks like a human, but obviously is a bot? And my answer to that is no. It's a human community. The whole point of Pavilion is that it's humans interacting with each other. So even though I could replace, our enrollment team and our engagement team with an AI, I don't want to, because I don't want to impact the brand in that way.
One of the things that we spoke about last time, David, was around how one was to win this market, you have to win the enterprise. It seems like you guys are winning that race right now based on how much of your client base is enterprise focused right now. And just from what I hear from the other companies, that's not the case there. The other part was around the product. The product is going to evolve into one where we're going to give suggestions and directions to reps that can help them achieve their objectives. And since then, I think what has really played out is this agentic capability in AI. And you saw Mark Benioff apparently pivoted the entire Dreamforce conference 2 months before it to be focused on AI agents. And early on, it was like, is it something? But the Anthropic people had this really interesting demo that they put out about a week or two ago, where they showed how Claude would just take over your screen, like robotic process automation 2.0, essentially, a really smart version of it. And it was super compelling, like super, super compelling. So it seems like we're moving towards this world faster than we have in other platform shifts, but we're moving towards a world where we're understanding one of the use cases will be these AI agents. And I want to get your thoughts as from your product hat perspective, which I think you're underrated on the product side, but you can't win the enterprise without being good at product. It seems like there's just going to be 1 million agents. So like, how is this going to work? Like, Salesforce will have an agent, you will have an agent, AJ will have an agent. Like, will I just have 1 million agents? How will all this work together? Or do you see a world in which you're going to have a lot of the companies right now that are customer facing, that have end users, become middleware companies? And then you have companies like Salesforce that are the ecosystems that have the distribution, and there's a couple of agents on top of it. And so QuotaPath becomes middleware instead of like an end customer solution. How are you viewing this?
Well, that's such a simple question. I figured maybe AJ.
Right, exactly. Just predict the future very clearly, please.
So look, I think there's going to be a lot of agents. I think right now, what you are seeing, Mark demoed this. I think you see this. There's a lot of companies that are doing this well today. at the front end of a customer journey and at the back end of a customer journey, agents are really effective today, right? They're really effective in, to Sam's point, hey, I'm coming to your website. I just have a bunch of basic questions. How does this work? Does this do this? Does it not do that? I just need to know. We already know today buyers are doing up to 70% of their due diligence before they engage with sellers. So that's going to happen largely through bots. And I think bots are very good at, here are all the questions. Yes or no. Do you do this? Do you not do that? Type thing. I also think on the back end of the process, from a support perspective, we see great results from bots, 80, 90% deflection rate, high resolution rate. And so you will see bots show up, a myriad bots show up in both the front end of the process, the back end of the process. I do think when you think about the bookends of the technology in your go-to-market stack or your R&D stack, wherever it might be in your organization, your HR stack, in G&A, legal, you will see bots that are very specific to the platforms you are building or investing in. I think in revenue orchestration, you'll see, bots that will help take on a lot of administrative overhead of sellers so they can spend more time with prospects and customers. You'll see things like coaching bots or coaching agents come in and say, hey, Asad, looks like you're about to jump on a call with this prospect on these topics. Here's some great coaching that you can watch, 2-minute videos, 1-minute videos, 30-second videos, industry best practices, in-house best practices around how best to deliver this message. I don't know that this is that you're going to have an ecosystem littered with bots. I think that probably will feel a little bit like it was 5 years ago when we had too many things in our go-to-market tech stacks, giving us
David, right now,
conflicting insights. I don't think we want that. But I do think you're going to see them on, sort of the top of the funnel. You're going to see them on the support side. And then you'll see very specific bots embedded in your biggest platform investments. But to really
worries me.
On this, I'd like, to defer to my colleague, AJ here.
I have this totally figured out. I'm not sitting here just ripping up pieces of paper, staring down and being amazing and be like, don't call on me. Don't call on me.
I think the thing that really
over in his notebook.
The thing that's interesting and a little bit just worrying or strange is that the average number of tools per team in a large business sits at 71 right now, 71 SaaS tools. So we don't have 71, each of them is I've got an agent coming. So you got 71 agents. My job is just going to be managing the group of 70 agents. How am I? It feels like there's another step that has to happen that makes managing these things a little bit more manageable, because right now everybody's saying my thing is coming, but then if everyone's got a thing, then there's just too many things, and that's super inefficient.
Yeah, and I think Sam's earlier point, right? Look, you do not want to create some weird Frankenstein monster of agents that your prospects and customers are dealing with every day.
Yeah.
That is going to be a miserable experience as a prospect and a customer. So I think you want to be highly selective as to, what agents you're using, how those agents are trained, how you are managing sort of the efficacy of their results, and making sure that you are bringing clarity to the process and not complexity, both for your sellers or your customers.
Go ahead, AJ.
No, I was just going to say, I think one area I can talk to is I, a couple of weeks ago, interviewed, when I was doing one-on-ones, I do one-on-ones quarterly with a lot of the team, and the 20 one-on-ones that I did, I just asked them about their daily use of AI. How has it evolved? How are they thinking about it? And qualitatively, the sentiment is still very skeptical, mostly with engineers. Honestly, it's actually really interesting to see how skeptical engineers are to it. And obviously, I know what Austin's going to say to this. Do you have the right engineers, AJ? And so the thing but our teams are still fairly skeptical, and we have to be cognizant of that. And I think one area of improvement for us as operators and CEOs is just continuing to normalize it, to talk about use cases. Every week we have a different AI use case that we go through in different departments, in marketing and sales, engineering, and where it was helpful. We ourselves have a really big launch in January that we've been working on for 9 months and really, really excited about that and to help. What I tend to say, I go back to what you said in terms of outcomes, David, talking about driving the right outcomes to the business. And bots and AI, whether it's on the front end or the back end, it's all about how are they driving the right outcomes in that moment of time for your customer. And if we can continue to like ease that friction across the board, across our application in any way, that's how I think it's most powerful, and where it provides the most value is to allow us to come in as consultants and guide the organization to achieve those outcomes, but also using this as a co-pilot or whatever you want to call it along the way.
AJ, when you say that, are you also, because outcomes, if you can start driving outcomes, you can charge the most, right? Essentially, if they're good outcomes, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that something you're thinking about actively right now, which is how do I drive outcomes through the technology we're selling? And does that give us an opportunity to move away from seat-based pricing? Because obviously the division you sell into has just got less seats than it used to have before. But if you were doing outcomes, that's interesting. Like, are you thinking like that right now?
Well, all of us in the go-to-market world are, for sure. I mean, I know David mentioned it earlier. For us, it's directly tied to incentives. You drive the behavior. If you align the company objectives to the right incentives, you're driving the right outcomes, and that's like just literally tied to it. And I mean, I have a plan in my head on how we're gonna crawl, walk, run to get to there. But your ultimate point there, which I do believe true, is that per user pricing will go away in some way in the next few years. I don't know if it's going to go away next year, but I truly believe that like software companies next year will all be AI first companies, or you won't exist. Like that's
it could go away, but it could also be like tiered in the following way. There's a platform fee, there's a seat-based fee, and there's an outcome-based fee, right? Like you can charge in more than just one dimensional manner.
Sure.
And so I think there will be companies as they the transition to go from seat-based to outcome-based entirely is a very intense transition.
That's going to be
it's a very risky transition as well.
Yeah, you probably have an opinion on this. I'd be curious what you think about this.
Well, AJ, I see it very analogous to how you do it. I do believe go-to-market software companies are going to have to move away from per seat pricing. You think about the complexity of that for a business like yours or a business like mine. It's a lot, but then you think about it for a business like a Salesforce or something like that. It is wildly fraught with risk. And you have to be very, very confident in the consistency of the outcomes that you can derive. And you have to be able to correlate those outcomes to the platform, and that's all of those are very difficult things. You also have to make sure you do it in a way that you don't create this weird perverse incentive where companies are getting the outcomes, but they believe there's a disproportionate premium and spend to those outcomes. And then they feel like, now I'm like, I want to be successful, but I sort of don't want to be because it's going to cost me more money, and it creates a weird dynamic with the products. And so I think it's very nuanced. I can't imagine it happens next year. I do think, to your point, net new companies that start off probably will try to find a way to not be seat-based, but I can't imagine that all of us are going to be able to cross that bridge in the next 12 months. That's a big bridge, and there's already enough uncertainty in the macro. But I think I do agree with you. I can't imagine in 5 years, you will see seat-based pricing.
The other thing that does, besides to customers, is, and I'm again at this summit and talking to all these operating companies, is that we were in this golden age that you contributed to, David, through Salesforce. The golden age of SaaS, right? Where
made me sound old enough. The .com is like.
Well, I'm really talking about the golden age of SaaS, where the beauty of SaaS were many, but the predictability and the ease of understanding the business model, for investors to underwrite that risk was very easy because it was very clear. You put money in and it would come out in a predictable way. And now everybody is going to have to represent their business to the rest of the world, obviously to the investment community, but really to everybody, to say, here's how these things interconnect, and this is why I have some level of equivalent predictability. We were talking with Spitz about Snowflake and how I feel like they've contaminated the word NRR a little bit. They would talk, definitionally, it's correct. They have 160%, they have 180%. I'm not saying that they're misrepresenting it, but for me, the point of net revenue retention is that if you start at $10 million in 2023 and you have 120%, you end at 12 million and then 14.4, and you can very clearly understand that there's growth in the base that is predictable. But if you have usage-based pricing and if everything's consumption-based or outcome-based, the level of predictability around the business itself is out the door, which is why Snowflake's NRR can go from 180% to 120%, which isn't supposed to happen with NRR. It's supposed to be fairly linear in terms of the predictability. And so I think all of us are going to have to figure out a way to say, here's how the business interoperates with itself so that you can have the confidence that this is what it's going to generate in 2024, it made sense in this world that we've been in where you'd have a early career founder that's doing 10 million in ARR or 8 or 6 or whatever saying, and next year we'll get to 16, and it was clear to understand how they could say that because you had this base that they could leverage and then you'd hopefully generate the same amount of new business. And that case will be much harder to make in the future. And that doesn't mean that there's not opportunity, but I think the degree of difficulty of operating these companies is increasing as we enter this new world.
I agree. And I think it's going to be very important that if you are moving to usage-based pricing, that flywheel between your go-to-market team and your R&D team better be really tight.
Yeah.
Asad, you asked me a question right when we kicked off about things I might have learned or changed in the last 4 months. There is one, I know we're coming up on time, but I think this is an important one if we've got a minute left.
All the time you need.
When
Exactly.
most of us, when we were selling in 2020 and 2021, 2019, the methodologies, the engagement models, the narratives that we brought to market, that we trained everybody on, do not work today at all. And one of the big lessons that I learned this year was that, there's a lot of institutional knowledge in organizations and it's very hard to purge it. But look, we all lean on our muscle memory and things we know. So if you've been selling at your company for 2, 3, 4 years, you've heard very different messages in the last 18 months from your leaders than you heard before. But if it hasn't forced you into a behavioral change to understand, to develop new selling skills, to understand new messaging, to get certified on the new product that's solving different use cases than the ones from 4 years ago, you're going to be at a huge disadvantage. So one of the things that we had to do, we rebuilt the entire market narrative. But when we looked around and said, okay, everyone needs to get certified on this, we found that people were sort of holding on to their old artifacts that they used. They weren't leaning in the way we needed them to into this new messaging and all that. Now, our best go-to-market, resources were definitely doing it and they were crushing it. But there were a lot that were not. So one of the things that we had to do not only was build a new narrative, not only put it through, the L&D team in our people organization and enablement and our go-to-market teams, we had to drive a company-wide certification. But we also ended up having to replace the platform that we use to deliver presentations everywhere because we had to go back and burn hundreds of presentations. So they just don't exist anymore and you can't find them.
You have to burn the boats.
Yeah, you got to burn the boats.
Shit.
And so we went through the process of burning the boats on all of these presentations because this is not a lead with basic cadence anymore. This is, a first and third party signal-based workflow platform with AI and CI and all of these really important capabilities. And so one of the sort of best practices I would challenge leaders with is make sure that if you've made this transformation in your own company, that you truly have burned the old boats and don't give people access to go back to them because they will follow their muscle memory.
David, you're bringing up something so critical that I absolutely love and believe, and I will add another layer to this, which is on boards and investors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's challenging because they're all about pattern matching, and they've all seen success at some level in different ways, and those playbooks do not work. They absolutely do not.
Nope.
And it's really tough as a founder for a CEO to be standing in front of a board, whatever the configuration you're looking at, and listen and take it in, but also know that things have changed. So you have to become the thought leader in the boardroom and have the confidence that, like, look, we don't know all the answers. These are the things that we're testing out right now, and the signals will tell us what that demand looks like, and then I'll continue to update you.
That's right.
You really have to be the driver of that, and it's so tough to do it, but you got to lean into the wind a little bit on those
We
conversations.
do. And the playbooks, look, there's so much value in the playbooks, but playbooks built for one time don't translate into a different time. And so, one of the questions I always have, which is, look, I understand what page 1 of the playbook says. Tell me what pages 2 through 5 say. Right? Because yes, I'm sure we have all heard, oh, I don't know why this is so hard. In 2018, we just did this and we were able to get 3x the growth in a year.
Yeah.
And the answer is like, well, that sounds fantastic. I wish we had those days back. But I do think that it's really important to understand that whatever you had built before, whether it's board playbooks, go-to-market playbooks, whatever it was, if they were built for 2012 to 2021, that was a different world, and they do not work. And look, if you want to archive them, if you want to put them on the mothball fleet, that's fine. But if they are accessible to your people will continue to access them.
This is such a great point. So it brings up another question, which is benchmarks from then. So one of the things Sam spoke about is this metric of go-to-market efficiency, how much it costs you in sales and marketing to generate $1 of net new ARR. And it's basically around 56% more expensive today than it was in 2019. Made sense, right? And so a lot of what we hear people talk about is trying to get it back to a previous time. Mm-hmm. And the question we've all got is that a lot has changed since then. And one of the things that's changed a lot is the competitive landscape. There's way more companies now than there were before. I believe there's 7% more companies every quarter. And so you will have twice as many competitors in about 2 years than you have today. And so if there's more competitors, more people fighting for attention, more noise out there, then breaking through becomes harder. Go-to-market becomes harder. So in this new world of go-to-market, do you think that it will be more expensive than we have been used to in markets where interest rates were zero and there was less competition? It will be more expensive, and we're going to have to figure out how to manage those expenses by finding efficiencies in other parts of our businesses through things like automation and outsourcing. Like, is that kind of what you think the game is going to be?
I think that's part of it. Look, I think you could ask anybody on this call, do we spend as freely as we did 3 years ago? And the answer is, heck no, we definitely do not spend as freely. And so, look, it is going to be more expensive to get deals done because everyone's guard is up more, right? It gets back to, I need to trust you. I need to make sure this is going to work. And I need to make sure it's going to work well and the first time and in an ongoing way. And it takes more time for a go-to-market organization to prove that to a buyer. Even if the buyer is doing 70% of their due diligence before they engage with the buyer, the meat of it is the last 30%. Yeah. And yes, I talk to, you guys talk to probably more CROs than I do, but every CRO I talk to is telling me basically the same thing, which is, look, it feels like there's more opportunity out there now than there was a couple quarters ago. Yeah. But at the very end of every deal, prospects are holding their budget very tight, saying, okay, do I really need to do it this quarter, or can I wait another quarter? Can I wait another quarter? That it's better than it was 3 quarters ago, but that is still a very real challenge. And I think it's what's driving the frustration at the board level in a lot of companies. Yeah. Like, we're still not getting the predictability we used to have. But I think while customers are looking for trust, boards and leaders are looking for durability in the revenue. Like, one of the big differences from 3-4 years ago is durability was not that important. Getting the logos and getting the top line growth was important because there was so much of it. We don't really need the durability. The volume took care of durability. We don't have the volume now. So prospects demand trust. That takes some time. Sellers demand durability in their deals, and that takes time, right? Because the way I get more durability is I get you to trust me, so you're not going to mitigate the risk by creating weird, goofy contracts without clauses and this and that and the other thing. And so I think it's in the interest of both parties to be thoughtful take a proven approach, and I think workflow is great for this, by the way, but, take a consistent and proven approach in every interaction. It's the only way you will get both trust and durability at the same time. And I think if you do that, it's okay if your customer acquisition cost is higher, because you're going to keep that logo. The lifetime value of that customer is just much greater.
Yeah.
And your opportunity to grow and get share of wallet, if you're building the right way and innovating in the direction that aligns with the broad swath of your customers, then you should be able to increase share of wallet along the way as well, further strengthening the durability. But it's definitely not what it's a couple of years ago. That's for sure.
I think we've come up upon our time together, David, and we end each episode with shout outs and wins of the week. And you're still with us, so you're going to have to contribute. You're going to have to think about a big win for Salesloft, or a shout out for somebody on your team, or somebody in your customer base, or somebody else. Are you prepared to join us for this last segment?
Sure. I mean, I was hoping that the shout out would be, we're going to do the next one with AJ and Maui, or with you. And
oh, there we go.
Well, the next one, 2 from now, I will be in Barcelona, folks. Show, and I don't know. I assume AJ is going to dial in from Maui. Asad, why don't you go first? Shout out win of the week.
Okay, so I've got one. This is interesting. So 4 college students from University of Toronto just developed this anti-drone technology that outperformed systems that were made by major defense companies like Boeing. And this was a competition that the Canadian military put together. These students decided to enter. And how they did this was they basically built devices that emit high-frequency sound waves to disrupt drones in flight. And so what it does is it exploits the material's resonant frequencies, and the components start vibrating and then they malfunction. And so they started this by experimenting with car speakers. They're like, okay, this works a little bit. And then they went into other speakers with bigger and bigger frequencies, to the point where they got to something that could eventually destabilize a drone from 50 meters away, making them unstable and throwing them off course and making them crash. The final prototype that beat Boeing cost these students $17,000. And so shout out to these kids in University of Toronto. It is remarkable how many super technical, very intelligent people come out of these Canadian universities. One of OpenAI's founders, Ilya, was from there as well. AI was, a lot of the early innovation in AI happened at that university. And then when you compare that to the vibrance of our Canadian tech ecosystem, something's not working, and hopefully it starts working soon. But shout out to these guys.
An interesting off-the-cuff answer.
Indeed. Indeed. Like a lot going on there.
Better have one at all. Good.
Glad I'm going last year.
He's shilling for Canada in some ways, condemning Canada in other ways.
I will go. I'll go next, and I'll make mine quick. I'm going to give a shout out to my director of customer experience, customer success, Betsy Wilson. I mentioned earlier that I've been diving into all the world of CS, and she takes on the customer load and customer challenges, and I get to share that with her this week and for the foreseeable future. And she is awesome. She's a rock star. So thank you, Betsy. In a world where it's a thankless job right now, all the things that David mentioned, the durability, 100%, and the expectation on the customers for back to the expectations on you as the vendor are at the highest they've ever been. Yeah. And you have to show that value, and you have to show it. And she puts so much care into every interaction that she has. So thank you, Betsy, for being a rock star.
Great job, Betsy. David, how about you?
So I'm going to give a shout out to our CMO, Randy. Randy just led us through this complete overhaul of the narrative. Wow. And it was a very well executed cross-functional project. But I think one of the huge benefits that we didn't totally anticipate was what we just talked about, which was the ability to do a really good reset across the entire organization all at once within one quarter to get everybody on message in the right way. That is a big lift. It's one thing to do it within your marketing org or for your go-to-market team, but doing that across the entire organization is a huge lift. But I think it makes us better across the board. Even I was looking at our stats today. All of our engineers are getting certified on the message as well. I think that's really important because ultimately our engineers are building this platform. They have to deeply understand the pain customers feel when they don't have something like this. And so this was not an easy effort. I have a tendency to say, look, there's just 3 things we got to do, man. It's not that hard. And those 3 things are not 3 little things. And just is probably not the right word to be using. And I do this a little too much. But Randy and the whole leadership team was like, okay, just 3 things. We got it. No problem. And they ran with it and they've done a fantastic job. So
what's Randy's last name?
Randy is Littleston. He comes from originally, I should call this out, big Michigan guy. So University of
Blue
guy.
I'm really happy.
North Carolina guy today. He and his family live in North Carolina, but dyed in the wool Michigan guy.
I love it. Awesome.
Shout out Randy.
Yes.
I'm going to shout out. First of all, I just went over to the Salesloft website, and the first thing I see is profitable.
I was going to show you after this.
So I'm going to shout out Salesloft for that great phrase, which I'm a big fan of, because I believe in profitable, efficient growth. And then David and I were chatting, alluding to it at the beginning of the show, but there's team sports. I think sports are really, really powerful models for great performance in our society. I love sports. And this past Sunday, when you're listening to this, it was a week ago that, the Washington Commanders threw a Hail Mary pass with 2 seconds left. And Noah Brown caught it from Jaden Daniels. And there's just something about teams, special teams. And you know this when you see it. I saw it with the 2019 Washington Nationals. I saw it with the Washington Capitals in 2018. There's certain kinds of teams, and when you can sense the joy that they're having from being together and playing hard and excelling, and it translates to success. And joy seems to be either the output or the input to high performance. But you can sense something different with different teams, and this Washington Commanders team has that special something. I don't know that means they're going to win the Super Bowl, but it's really, really, it's really energizing and inspiring to see a group of people come together towards a common purpose and not just accomplish that purpose, but have fun doing it. So I'm going to shout out the Washington Commanders.
I don't know how to put an hex on that team.
Jinxes aren't real. I don't have any power over what they're doing as a collective.
Jets fans are the greatest. They're like 2 years ago, I think they were like 7-2, and they're like this team something.
It shows you
not your Jets.
People collectively working together, and one person can screw it all up, like Aaron Rodgers in this case.
Well, the Jets finished 7-10 that year, so just FYI.
All right, everybody. Thanks. So go ahead, David.
Yes, I love the concept of a team coming together for a bigger mission, and just the perseverance and the fortitude of never giving up. I mean, what did you have? 4 seconds left on that clock?
There were 2 seconds left, and the key play that set it up was Terry McLaurin doing a 10-yard out, which Tony Romo predicted. I've watched the whole last sequence.
Who was the Bears corner? Who's the Bears corner that was celebrating?
Tyreek Stevenson, and he was taunting the crowd and not even paying attention, and he deserved to lose.
And then he batted the ball up. Perfect.
Yeah. All right, folks. Thanks for listening.
He said, no. Barcelona, AJ, enjoy Maui.
Thanks for joining us, David. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
Bye, everyone.
You guys.
Thanks,
Take
David.
care.
This episode was brought to you by AirCall, the business communications intelligence platform. Deliver a better experience for your customers and your teams at AirCall. That's AIRCALL.io. Save time, save money, and improve performance with a single communications platform.
Thanks for listening to Topline. New episodes come out every Sunday. If you like what you heard today, subscribe so you never miss an episode, leave a 5-star review, and share it with your friends. Don't forget to join our Topline Slack channel to connect with us and discuss the topics we cover with other listeners. Click the link in the show notes. Lastly, if you're interested in joining Pavilion, you can learn more about membership at joinpavilion.com/membership. Thanks again for listening.